Please welcome the founder and CEO of TINYpulse, all the way from Seattle, David New.
Thank you, Doug. Good morning, Fargo! I'm so excited to be here. My first time in Fargo. And, I've had a great time here. Great food, great people, great beers, great AV team. Arthur Ventures folks have been just extremely hospitable. I think we also have some clients in the crowd. Do I have the dog pound from Dog IDs somewhere in here? Yeah. Intelligent Insights? Yeah. And Arctic IT all the way from Alaska? Oh, thought they were here. Did I miss anyone? Great. Well, like I said, I'm thrilled to share my journey. And one of the things I want to start out with is let's cue this up. Okay, so how many of you guys want to be entrepreneurs or are an entrepreneur right now? Can you raise your hand? Got it. So there's a lot of people who want to do entrepreneurship. So I'm here to share my journey and all the mistakes I've made along the way. So hopefully you can avoid making them. So start out, I have a lot of enthusiasm to be in Fargo, and when I first started thinking about this trip, and when the AV folks contacted me, they sent me this shirt, and this shirt had, Moscow, London, Paris, and then Fargo, right? It was a black shirt. I couldn't find that, so I just used this picture. I thought, wow, that's a really interesting shirt, and it really made me start thinking about my trip here. But then I remember, this was about a month and a half ago, I looked at my TripIt about all the trips I have upcoming. So it looked like this. I was going to Saigon, Miami, Orlando, Fargo, and San Francisco, right? I'm like, oh, that's a lot of traveling. But I remember thinking, you know what? Which place am I most excited about going? It's not the beach, it's not the Golden Gate Bridge, it's not Saigon, but it's Fargo. So I'm so excited to be here. We got to redo that shirt. So tell you a little bit about my journey is I think Doug spoke about it. So I was getting my MBA, and classically, me and my classmate, we won a business plan competition, raised $1 million from Guy Kawasaki and some other angel, and then we ended up dropping out of school. And we basically made, that's not the whole story yet, but we basically, MBA stood for management by accident. Right? We made every single mistake in the book, but we persevered. We were able to, keep the pedal to the metal, and we were able to actually end up selling that to a quantib. And part of that experience is I thought, well, it's really hard to raise money. It's, sorry guys, close your ears. It's a pain in the butt. I didn't want to deal with that again. So the only logical thing to do for my next company, Buddy TV, is we turned around and raised $10 million, right? So we raised $10 million and we started Buddy TV. And then in 2012, I ended up starting TINYpulse. But in between, I took a very dramatic detour, right? I took what I call a career vacation or a careercation. And I want to share my story around that. So I remember in 2012, and leading up to that, when you're getting up and you're getting ready to go to work in the morning, and I just wasn't feeling like a 9 or 10 going to work. Which is really weird because it's my own company, right? So I thought, well, is this an isolated incident or is this a serial occurrence? So then, I look in the mirror the next day, I'm not too happy, and then the next day, and I'm like, wow, this is definitely, not a good thing, right? And I thought, well, if I'm not a 9 or 10 going to work, how is that fair to my co-founder? How is that fair to my investors? But most importantly, how is that fair to the people I'm privileged to manage on a day-to-day basis? Because if I'm not a 9 or a 10, how can I expect them to be a 9 or 10 and deliver great service to our clients? At the same time, at some really life-changing events, I met my wife, and we had, and when I talk about like really sudden, she came down from Vancouver, and she visited me in Seattle for 5 nights, and she stayed over. And then I went up to Vancouver for 5 nights, and I stayed at her place, and on the 11th night, she drove a U-Haul and moved in, right? So if anyone's on their 10th date, I do not recommend probably doing that too soon. So we're like, hey, we're in love, and we're like, we're gonna get married, and we want to start a family. But I thought, well, maybe we're going pretty quick. We should take a step back and think about this for a little bit. And there is a guy who he writes about relationships. His name is called Dr. John Gottman. I don't know if anyone's heard of John Gottman, right? So he has this awesome book about making marriages work, and he holds workshops. So I said, oh, let's go together, and we got a lot of energy around that. And the premise of his book is this. He has this like lab, it's called the Love Lab in the University of Washington, and couples come and they stay there, and he observes them. And his claim to fame is that by observing someone within an hour, he has 94% ability to predict, are you going to get divorced or not, right? So he says like he's not really popular when it comes to dinner parties because no one wants to be, I don't know about this couple. Well, you guys are okay. So me and my wife, or my girlfriend at that time, we decided, well, let's go to this 2-day class. And part of that class is you get these cards, and you draw a card, and then you have to write down what you think the answer is for your significant other and vice versa. So it starts out really easy, like, hey, what's their favorite color? What's their favorite food? Who's their best friend? Which relative they like the most? And I'm getting all these right. I'm like, dude, this marriage thing, I've got it figured out, right? This is gonna be easy. And I remember one card, that last card, and I drew it, I'm like, wow, I have no idea. And the question was, what is your significant other's dreams in life? And I'm looking at it, I'm like, and I sheepishly write down, to be a great wife. For the guys in the audience, that was not the right answer. The answer that she had, and she had worked at Schwab and EA in project management. She was her own entrepreneur. But what her dreams in life was to write a play or a book. And I never knew that. None of her history had alluded to that. But what was so empowering to me is now that I knew my wife's dreams in life, I could think about ways to connect the dots to further that, or to maybe buy subscriptions to the local theater in Seattle. So at the same time, I also shared with her my dreams in life. And one of mine was, I thought it was kind of crazy that you work until you're 67 and a half and you retire, and you hope that there's Social Security out there, and that you have a little bit of wealth that you saved up, but your health declines over time. And I've seen that with my own parents. And I said, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense. If I save my money and I don't spend lavishly, I should be able to take my retirement and bring it forward and chunk it up throughout my life, and what I call a careercation, and be able to learn and be able to refresh me both personally and professionally. So at this time, we had a daughter, our daughter Kira. She was a few months old, and I was getting burnt out. So I was talking to my wife, like, maybe it's time that we do a careercation. And she's much more conservative now that she's had a kid. And she's like, well, I don't know, because everyone you're talking to about taking this careercation says, you're crazy, or I wish I could, right? Especially when you're traveling with a young kid. So being a tech entrepreneur, thinking, well, why are people telling me I'm crazy or I wish I could? So I decided, obviously, to Google it. So I said, well, let me input flying with kids, and what happens? And the first thing is, how can I make traveling with kids less of a nightmare, right? And we've all done that Southwest shuffle where you're going down that aisle and you're like, oh, there's an aisle seat. You're about to take it and there's a kid sitting in the middle. You're like, I'll take that middle seat down there, right? So, these are the images that, kind of go through your mind when you're thinking about traveling with kids. And for the people who travel a lot, you know what I'm talking about. But despite that, my wife said, okay, let's do it. Because I was able to share with her my dreams, and she wanted to make my dreams become a reality too. So in February of 2012, we sold everything we owned, we stuffed the rest of the belongings in storage, and then we bought one-way tickets to New Zealand. And our goal was to travel for 6 to 12 months and just travel around and really refresh. And so here is a photo of, this is my wife Alice, my daughter Kira, and so this is in the Air New Zealand jet. When that door first closed, there's a million reasons why I couldn't go. I got a speeding ticket the day before. I'm like, how am I going to take care of this? I've got anxiety around, did I transition the company well? And I was making excuses why I shouldn't go. But when I jumped and we got on that jet, it was just an awesome feeling, having that kind of layer come off of me. And this is our actual first photo of my daughter in Auckland. And I know she looks a little spaced out, but I promise we didn't use baby NyQuil to drug her out. But for any other parents, if you do that, I'm not judging. So our goal was to, one, have some amazing shared family memories, And then 2 is I wanted to dig into a little bit more about and interview other CEOs wherever I went about their best practices and pain points when it came to culture, leadership, and managing people. Because I don't know why I was so burnt out in my own company, but I had a feeling it was around the softer stuff. It wasn't the hard metrics because we were doing really well. So I ended up interviewing 35 CEOs in all walks of life, from the winemaker in New Zealand to the fruit trader in Shanghai to the financial services consultant in Seoul. And I actually did blog about it and then write a book about my experiences, which this is I gained so much insight from these individuals that it's the book is actually free online. You can read the whole thing for free if you wanted to, because I didn't feel right for charging for it unless you want a physical copy. You can buy that at Amazon. But so I learned all these great experiences, and then I want to share some of those with you guys. So the first thing is so a culture, for all those people who raise their hands who are an entrepreneur or who aspire to be an entrepreneur, a culture is very, very organic, and it changes all the time, and it's kind of like a garden. You have to be really intentional about what you plant, how you water it, how you weed it, and then you create this awesome culture, right, that lives on and people admire. But usually what ends up happening is you're focusing on product market fit, you're focusing on your first customers, and then you turn around and you're like, uh-oh, right? That ends up being your culture, and it becomes overgrown. And even if you have a beautiful culture, you still have to tend to it all the time. And our research shows that less than 50% of employees know their company's vision, mission, and values. So if you don't know them, how can you ever achieve them? So for one of the lessons I learned along the way is be very intentional and be very thoughtful about how you've come up with your values and how you're able to live with them, and then cultivate them all the time. And even if you have that beautiful garden on the left, it doesn't stay that way. You got to keep investing in it all the time. So, and it also starts at the top. So I interviewed Stuart Finlayson in Australia, and he shared with me this great video, which I want to play for you guys right now. Okay, so this is some guy at a music festival in the state of Washington, right? So he's dancing. This is you. You want to start a company? You got to be out there dancing, right? I'm sure Doug was like this too, back in the days, right? You got to be dancing, and people are looking at you saying, hey, this guy's crazy, like, what is he doing? Is he smoking something? Well, in Washington State, it's legal now, but he's still dancing. Okay, your first guy comes up. This is probably your first developer. He's moonlighting, right? He's not going to quit his job yet. But he's believing. Now there's 2 of you guys. Now it's just not one crazy person. There's 2 crazy people. But you're dancing. You're trying to get your first customer. You're looking for product market fit. People are like, man, what are these people doing? But you gotta just believe in what you're doing, and you have to have conviction. You're gonna be tired. You're gonna be lonely. You're not gonna have a lot of salary. Probably no salary. But you gotta be dancing out there, and you gotta be believing that you're gonna end up making it. Now, it's lonely, but now at least you have 2 of them. So you're still going. It looks like your first QA person shows up. He's probably part-time too, right? So now there's 3 of you guys, dancing away, and people are still thinking, man, now there's 3 crazy people, and just watching these people like, what are they doing? What are they dancing over there? He's on his back, he's rolling around the ground, and probably sales and marketing show up now. They see a little success. They probably have their MBA too, right? So and then all of a sudden, what ends up happening? You start a trend, and then more people are coming. And then you got PR, you got international expansion coming, but it all started, and what ends up happening is this whole hill erupts, and everyone wants to be a part of that company and what that person started. So the lesson is you have to be willing to dance and be alone at the top, and it starts at the top. So being an entrepreneur, we see all the glamorous sides. There's also a very dark side. You have to be able to persevere and invest and keep on believing when other people don't. And then we can stop that video. And what's funny is I showed this at this other presentation, and someone says, David, I know that guy. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm like, what is he doing? I've always wanted to learn. You know what he's doing? He's studying to become a doctor. And he says he still dances at the library. He's bored and he's studying anatomy or something. He just gets on the table and starts dancing. I'm like, well, at least nothing's changed. How many of you guys have been to Zappos and done the Zappos tour? Right? It's amazing. Culture is the ultimate competitive advantage. They give that tour to their competitors because they know you can't copy them. In fact, you'll probably want to work for them because their culture is so much better. So I interviewed Andrea Culligan, who heads up an agency in Sydney. And when I was doing the tour, I saw the people in her office. I'm like, man, these people got a lot of energy, a lot of fun. And then so she takes me to a back room for our interview, and she's like, David, let me confess. About 18 months ago, our culture was crap. I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? Like, what happened? And she's like, well, it was really bad because we had this really traumatic split with the co-founder, but I was dedicated to turning it around. And I told people, hey, you have a choice, but I don't have a choice, and I'm going to turn it around, and it starts at the top with me. And so she rewrote the values of the business, and one of their values was have great fun. But she taught me the lesson of not just writing values and putting it in the break room, but really living them. And she even role plays them. I'm like, what? You role play your values? Well, what does that mean? So she's like, well, when the CEO's not around, we want everyone to be aligned with the values. So part of it is they'll get people together and they'll say, based on this situation, how should we react? And they write it down, and they review it together and say, well, are we consistent in our actions? And so one of the ways that she lives it is there was a company that was the #1 supplier, the lowest cost supplier for printed materials, and since they're an agency, it makes a big deal for them. She ended up, but no one in the team really liked to work with those folks. And so she ended up saying, well, based upon our values, what should we do? They're like, well, I think we should fire them and go to the next person that people actually like working with, even though that cuts into our profitability. And she says, you know what? You're right. So that was a big, loud message to her team about living through their values. So when you think about your values, think about how you live them so that they're real and they're just not just some poster in the break room that no one ever refers back to. So our research tells us one of the biggest factors in determining how engaged and happy employees are is their perception about how transparent management is. So this is, we talk about Zappos, they have their culture book, and this is a company that's called Conversion Rate Experts, and they're based out of the UK. So they TINYpulse, and one of the questions that came up was how transparent do you think management is? And they got actually a really low mark, but usually they get really high marks. So they were just appalled. They're like, really? Our team doesn't think we're that transparent. So the two co-founders got together, and they decided to ask a custom question to their people. And it was a very, very simple custom question that was only 3 words. It was, ask us anything. And we are going to commit to answering every single question that you ask. And one of the thorny questions was, how much does how much can I make? Who's a top earner in the company, and how did they get there? And they committed to answering every single one that ended up coming in. And then as a result, when they saw the happiness question again, it was off the charts for them because they committed to doing that. And the kicker is, it doesn't cost a lot of money. If you're like the CEO, it doesn't say okay, you gotta pay me money to be more transparent, right? So one of the learnings I get from this is always, how can I as a leader be more transparent to my team? And when you guys lead your troops or your companies or thinking about starting a company, same thing, is really push yourself to think, how can I be more transparent? Very low cost to no cost. Another great example of that is around recognition. All right, so everyone likes recognition, right? And it's not a booby prize, right? It's not like, come on. So the whole thing around recognition is that we know that if we give people an easy way to give recognition to their peers, 44% of the time they'll do that, and they're doing it for you. So recognition isn't just top down anymore, not the CEO or management to their team, but it should be organic. Everyone should be able to give everyone recognition. And in this world of being pervasive, mobile devices, always on, so that's one of the easiest things that you can do to help raising that bar at your culture right now is to start thinking about how can you give more recognition, how can you make it easy for people to give recognition on a constant, ongoing basis. So commitment and patience. Focusing on culture is hard, but that's the most important job you have as an entrepreneur, a founder, or a leader. It's just like working out. You wish you started early, right? But there's always an opportunity to start today and to make that change. And one of the fascinating things when I ended up doing my careercation and interviewing people, something I've never read in HBR, I've never read in any other journal, is if your culture has gone sideways, how long does it take to resuscitate it to become a high flyer again? And I've never read that anywhere. And what we've discovered is it takes about 6 to 18 months of concentrated effort from the top on down to be able to turn that ship around and move that culture. And it's dedication, it's commitment, and it's patience. And one of the reasons why our logo for TINYpulse is a lotus is this lotus has an amazing ability. So if your culture has gone sideways and is not doing well, the lotus flower can blossom over even if it's in really dirty, murky, disgusting water, it's able to blossom on top of it and still be this gorgeous, majestic flower. So that's the reason why our logo is a lotus. So some of our clients are high flyers who want to maintain a great culture. Others have gone sideways, but we tell them that you can change it. It's going to take time, and you can have a beautiful culture. And then some practical tips. So around values is when I was going on my careercation, I was doing a lot of journaling, a lot of thinking about, well, how do I think through my values? And I wanted to be very intentional. And one of the books I think Tony Hsieh wrote was Delivering Happiness, and that really touched me. So I wanted to be really thoughtful about it. But I didn't really know how to start. So I came up with this nice, easy exercise I would encourage you guys to think about and from a values perspective. So I took out a piece of paper, right, and I folded it in half. And on one side, I wrote down all the names of people I loved working with and why. And on the other side, I wrote down the names of people who took my energy, who I didn't like working with, and why. And so I've got these two lists of people and traits. And then I took out another sheet of paper, and I wrote down proposed values. So I just write, okay, I like this value, I like this value. And then I would take that sheet of paper and I would put those values on top of those two columns and say, does this enable column A to thrive? And does this weed out the column B people who take my energy? The answer was no. So I would keep repeating that process until I felt really, really comfortable with the set of values that embodied what I felt comfortable with and confident with, and also sharing it with our company and making decisions, hiring and firing based upon that. So let me tell you our values and the reason why. And of course, every company has different values, but these are ours. So the first, and our acronym is DELIGHT. The first one is delight the customer. And usually, when you go in for an interview and people say they have a great culture, you should ask them, what are your values? And see if they can actually recite those values. Because for us, it just comes off the tongue. So when I talk about delight customers, it's easy to think about those external customers. But I also think about internal customers, right? So let's say a piece of code breaks, and the customer success team is on the hook for that, are they working well together? Because if we're not able to delight internally, how are we going to be able to delight externally? So one of the great things is like when I go to the Arthur Ventures office, everyone works so well as a team, right? And they're able to delight each other, and they gave me a fantastic experience. And that starts at the top, and that's very, very intentional. So think about, when we started, is like I didn't want any hierarchy, and I wanted everyone to be able to work really well internally so that we can project that externally. So the E is select and spread positivity. Is I tell people when you come into our office every day, through that front door, you have a choice. You can be positive, you can be neutral, or you can be negative. But the kicker is, it's free, right? You don't have to pay money to be happier. And so the idea is, I know sometimes people have a bad day, but when you come in through that office, you have a choice. But why not be happier? Why not elect positivity and spread that to your colleagues? But believe it or not, when you're talking to a customer or a prospect on the phone or through email, they're going to be able to feel that too, in that positivity. So make that decision as often as you can, because it's infectious to the people that are directly around you and the other people that you end up communicating with. The L, lead with solutions and embrace change. So my first career was a management consultant in San Francisco. And the head of, it was like a couple decades ago, so the head of the office was Mary Clubb. And she said, anyone can come into my office at any time, and you can bitch, moan, and complain, but you cannot leave my office without giving me a couple of proposed solutions to what you just complained about. Because you're probably thinking in your mind, like, oh, it's so dumb. Why do we do expense reports this way? Why don't we do it another way? So provide those solutions. That's the same type of mentality that I tell my team is, okay, you can use TINYpulse. You can talk to me. If you have an issue, let's talk about it. But also take that next step and lead with solutions. And by having that really proactive, it creates this awesome positive reinforcing cycle for everyone in the organization. The I is improving communications by being direct and transparent. So one of the things I don't like is when people are passive aggressive. Like if you have a problem, you have an issue, let's just talk about it. Let's be very, very, very direct about it, and let's focus on the data and the points that let us really help drive to the root cause and the root solutions. The G is to go the extra mile with passion. So our business is internet business, so we have a third of our clients outside the US. So when it's our weekend, it might not be their weekend. When it's our holiday, it might not be their holiday. So then we're gonna have people working all the time on the clients and customer service. So when you're gonna go that extra mile and you're gonna delight these customers, make sure you're passionate about it instead of just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm doing that. But really have a lot of energy in terms of how we wanna deal with that internally and then also externally. The H is hold yourself accountable. So we have a phrase that says big freedom equals big accountability. So we don't track PTO, we don't track sick days. I did at my other company, and it drove me crazy. So someone would have 7.6 hours of vacation time, and they wanted 3 days off. And I'm thinking, okay, well that's 24 hours, so it's 16.6 hours negative. Should we allow that? Right? I'm like, dude, that's so silly. Well, why am I having to worry about that? So now we just say, if you need to take time off, you need to take time off. You need to work from home, you work from home. But is that I will never create rules for the minority to police the majority. Because if I have to do that, I'm gonna have to let you go. Because we're creating something really special here, and I don't want all these rules just to police just a few people that end up overseeing the entire population. And then finally, the T is to treasure the freedom and the culture, because what we're doing is very special, it's hard, culture is organic, we're investing in it all the time. So if you're gonna do that, really treat what you're doing with a lot of respect and be a part of raising that culture together, because you have a choice where you wanna spend your life, you have a choice where the type of people you wanna lead. So think about that and really treasure it. And then, obviously, these aren't just words. Oops, you can go back. So these aren't words, but we hire, fire, make decisions, we give recognition, and we role play based upon these values. And a good example was when we were small, GE was a client, just one little group, and they didn't pay us that much money. It was $100 a month. And then GE said, hey, I want to pay by invoice. And at that time, we didn't do invoice. I didn't want to deal with invoice, but that was a hassle. We delight you, you pay us with a credit card. And sounds simple enough, right? So we got together as a group, and I don't know, there's 5 of us, and we sat around a round table, when we could back then, and we said, based upon our values, what should we do with GE? And in the back of my mind, I was secretly hoping, I hope there's no GE employees here, but I was secretly hoping that they say, oh, we don't want to do that, and I could say no to GE, right? But one of my team members said, you know what, David? I think that we're going to get, as we grow and become more successful, we're going to get more clients who just can't put tens of thousands of dollars on their credit card anymore. So let's embrace change, and let's just try it with GE and see how it works. And that was the end of the discussion. I'm like, you're absolutely right, BJ. That's what we're going to do. But that's what's so powerful when you have a common language and a common decision-making matrix and criteria for the company. And then the footnote of that story is GE still ended up paying by credit card, even though they said they wanted an invoice. Okay, so we all want a really awesome talent to work with. Here's one of the easiest things that you can do to get great talent to your workforce, is you take those values that you did and you put them right in the job rec. So I learned this from John Chen in Seoul when I interviewed him. So this is actually a job rec that we put out there. And we list all of our values, and then I say, give me 2 examples where you've exemplified our values with as much detail as possible, hopefully in your past job, or if not, if you're coming out of school and other activities. And anyone who does not take the time to do that, delete. Because they're not going to take the time when they're trying to put their best foot forward. How are they going to do that later? And now when I interview folks, one of the first questions I like to ask them is, what attracted you to the job rec? Almost, I would say probably 2/3 will say your values stuck out. Of all the companies I can work for in Seattle with unemployment hovering around 4%, it was because of your values. And that's going to be even more important as millennials flood the workplace. In 5 years, in 2020, 50% of the employees out there will be millennials. In 5 more, it's going to be 75%. And they care about this, so not only is this, I think, the right thing to do, but it also helps you attract top talent. So then, mission and vision. So now you got your values. How do you think about mission and vision? So what we did, mission is like, well, why do we exist as an organization? And for us, it was pretty easy. We kept it really simple to make employees happier, right? I think when I was at Anderson Consulting, it was like, we're going to leverage strategic values and competency. I'm like, dude, that doesn't make any sense to me, right? But for this, I'm like, oh, that makes sense, because if you're happy at work, when you go home, you're going to be happier. You'll be a better father, mother, brother, sister, friend, sibling. So that made a lot of sense, but I didn't understand how to do vision. So I'm like, man, how do I do a vision? You know, I get mission, but how do I do a vision? So obviously, I turned to Google again. So, and then I'm like, well, so I Google it, and I run across this guy, Ari of Zingerman's Deli. Has anyone been to Zingerman's Deli in Michigan? Okay, you guys have. I've never been there, so I want to go there because I heard it's great. And so he really focuses on culture, and if you guys Google this, you'll see the link that comes up in Fast Company or Inc. And what he suggests is once you have your values and your mission, you kind of close your eyes and you think about what is that future in 5 years going to be. So choose a date like your anniversary, your birthday, your significant other's birthday, and you think about what is it going to look like, what is it going to sound like, what is it going to taste like, what is it going to feel like, what is it going to smell like. So he was talking about his community initiative that he was going to do, like how many stands are there, what does it sound like, do I feel dogs like licking my ankles, blah, 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 blah. So that's exactly the same thing that we did at TINYpulse, is I projected 5 years down the road about my vision of what I wanted the company to be. And some of it is dramatically off. Like I said, I've only wanted like 15 employees, and we have like close to 40 now, so I missed that one. But some of the other things are really, really on point. So the goal is, if you don't have a North Star, you're never going to reach it. So why not be very intentional and deliberate, just like learning other folks' dreams? And then if you do end up reaching out to your employees, please make your surveys anonymous, right? Like this Dilbert cartoon always cracks me up. And the thing is, you're always going to get the best insights when it's anonymous, right? Like not everyone's going to be comfortable walking into Doug's office and telling him, what's on their mind. So make it anonymous. And then on the other side, when you're the leader or you're the manager, sometimes people call TINYpulse Tiny Punch, right? You're like, because it's anonymous, right? And you think, man, that was harsh criticism. Think about, don't focus on the who, because it's anonymous, focus on the what. Because if one person gave you that golden nugget of feedback, odds are likely that other people are feeling that way too. So to understand, how do you uncover it, and how do you make that organization better? And then finally, starting on the right foot, it's hard, as you have this, people dancing around, you got a lot of things going on. And we always, as leaders, we rush to the urgent at the expense of the important. We rush to the urgent at the expense of the important. So set it on your calendar as a recurring invite to the company. And that's what I do. That's how I get into my mode of always understanding and always focusing on culture. Every 2 weeks, we get together at 3:30 on Friday. We have drinks, and we go over all the survey responses. And then, so finally, you can't improve what you don't measure. Right? And that's been proven time and time again, right? And to improve, it's no accident. So when I threw this up there, right, is like, yes, for some businesses it's very, very haphazard, but I believe that you can make your own luck by measuring it and improving it on a consistent basis and being intentional and thoughtful about how to improve your company culture, which cascades to every aspect of your business and is an incredibly strong leverage point. So with that, I wanted to say that one of my favorite quotes is that nobody can go back and start a new beginning, but anyone can start today and make a new ending. And learn other people's dreams, learn your own dreams, make them come true, and it'll take you for an awesome journey. And so with that, I want to say, Fargo, thank you so much. It was awesome to be here.